Today's guest is someone super fascinating. He is a comedian here in Austin, Texas. He's performed all over the city, all over the country. He just recently got back from a trip to India, which is where his family is originally from. And we discussed everything from Israel, Iran, AI, the current government, Trump, just everything that is somewhat interesting and prevalent in today's culture. So I suggest giving it a watch, and be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. So give it up for Raza Jafri.
Cozy setup you got.
Yeah, I know. It's a new setup. This is the first podcast since I moved, so it's not as glamorous, you know.
When'd you move?
We moved like a couple weeks ago. We're actually gonna go finish moving after this because
Yeah.
I've been paying like a double lease for the last
wow.
month. Dude, just fucking milking my bank account.
Oh yeah. Are you you do video editing, correct?
A little bit. I do mainly filming.
Okay.
So I film everything for the YouTube channel I work for. And yeah, mainly filming, and then I manage all the back end data. So I organize everything. Like each project's typically like a terabyte.
Yeah.
And then I get everything uploaded to Dropbox, send it to the editors, and
Gotcha.
shit like that. And then now they've been making me like a talent member.
Oh really?
So now I'm like in the videos. Yeah, dude. One thing I do is they call me the Punisher. And so I just get to like I just get to punish influencers.
Okay.
So I'm like beating them with like pool noodles and shit, or
Yeah.
like just doing the weirdest. I made pizza out of them the one day.
Perfect.
Just super fucking
rewarding.
weird shit. Yeah, it's honestly
Somebody needs to do it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, I don't want to say too much, but yeah, it's a nice.
Now,
I do like that.
I'm
part of the
actually
job.
interested in your how has AI affected your world as a filmmaker?
Well, you know, obviously the thing with AI right now is all of the video generation stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I've played around with it. It's so fun.
we don't utilize it, but recently we have been contemplating doing some like some different like shots with it.
Yeah.
Like for example, if like my boss was reaching out to me and he was like showing me this like how AI could make like the Matrix shot where like they go up and it stays still and it like goes around. It's like literally takes like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
When traditionally in film that would take like, you know, a ridiculous amount of time and like 30 cameras.
Yeah.
Because the way they do it is like they'll literally get like 30 cameras and they'll put them all like in a line in the movement that they want, and they have them all roll at once or do like a photo. And so that way they can get that shot and it looks like you're not moving. But now with AI, you can just fucking plug it into some fucking something, the next AI company that's coming out with the next
I think it's
software.
Higgsfield that does that really well.
Yeah.
Is the name of the
Yeah.
I played around with it. They're super fun.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the thing about the AI stuff. It's like it's definitely questionable, but fuck, it does a good job, man. I mean, I've learned, I can't lie, I've learned a lot about many different subjects just typing it into Grok.
Yeah. Is Grok your main guy?
I don't use GPT at all.
Really?
I'm only Grok, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably like a little bit of an ideological thing, but not that I really trust Grok.
Sure.
But for some reason in my mind, I do trust it more than I trust GPT.
Yeah. That's fair.
I don't know. Twitter's questionable, and Elon is whatever he is, but I definitely...
He seems more principled than any of the other ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though recently he's been going a little bit crazy. Not in a bad way, though.
Yeah.
Not in the way I disagree.
I don't know. I it was interesting because I was like for this presidency far more than I was for the Kamala presidency.
Yeah, for sure.
Primarily because of what I saw as his principles. And I felt like in the euphoria of winning, I think he kind of made a lot of stupid moves. So like kind of stupid publicity or PR moves that made
Elon did.
Where he lost a lot of credibility. Like going on stage with a chainsaw, calling the prime minister of Canada, governor.
Yeah.
It's just like those things are like, they're foolish, right? And so then that made me, it's like, no, I don't, like I believe in the Doge sentiment, but like, you know, you chop down US aid and then That's like what, $30 of the U.S. budget compared to
Yeah.
the military industrial complex.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's also not up to him. It seems like.
Yeah.
So
It seemed like if it was up to him, he would have cut a lot more stuff, which
true.
is definitely questionable to a certain regard. But I will say there was a ton of fraud, at least from the stuff I saw going on with USAID. And there was more than just him talking about it. That was something RFK talked about as well.
Yeah, until he moved to conflating health with anti-Semitism,
Yeah, I know.
which is
Dude, I just
an insane thing.
I don't understand that transition. That really caught me off guard. I'll be honest, like before the election, I was pretty big into RFK.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
It seems
how people speak before they get into the machinery, and then all of a sudden it becomes like spooky. It's like the shell of their former selves.
Yeah, it's super
Especially
odd.
RFK. How much do you know about the JFK assassination?
Oh, I mean, I know a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I'm super fascinated by
It's
pretty much all conspiracies.
Right. Well, I mean, it's I think not to at least respect the idea that conspiracies have water to them is just now a sign of stupidity.
100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone says this, and it's not even a controversial take anymore. I think COVID was the true test for a lot of people. I think it really did wake a lot of people up.
Yeah.
Between the vaccine, I mean, dude,
How do you think COVID started?
Oh, I mean, it's not even a question at this point. Well, here's
Lab
the thing.
leak, yeah.
There is a question. Did the U.S. start it or did China start it?
You know Jeffrey Sachs?
I've heard that name.
You should listen to him. He's great. He says that there's pretty compelling evidence that it was a U.S. lab.
Well, that's the thing. It was the U.S. Wasn't it the U.S. lab in Wuhan?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And we know Anthony Fauci is this super shady, questionable character.
Yeah.
He was the head of the AIDS crisis and
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know Fauci's background.
So Fauci was just like he was for COVID, where he was kind of the face for everyone. Apparently, it was the same thing with AIDS.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't around then, but
It's crazy.
But he pushed
crazy
like
to be
these-
the face of AIDS.
Very true.
He
Very true.
has AIDS face.
But like one thing they did that's super fucked up. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. It's called Dallas Buyers Club. It's with McConaughey.
I've heard of it. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it.
So one of the drugs they were pushing during the AIDS crisis was called AZT, and it basically just killed you. Like it was an experimental drug, and so all these people who got AIDS were going and like begging to be a part of this AZT trial, even though they used it. I forget what they used it for before. It was like something that was just killing people again. And they're like, we'll try it again with AIDS. And so then they did it, and obviously everyone who took it for the most part just died.
Yeah.
And it's just a weird pharmaceutical experiment once again on the population of this country.
Yeah.
And
Have you read the book Chaos?
I have not, but I've seen the documentary on Netflix. I've also seen the Rogan with him.
Yeah.
Super fucking crazy shit.
It is wild, dude.
Dude, insane. A must watch.
It's a must watch, and it's also like it is fully like how can you trust the government to do like to believe anything they're saying about anything is like just it's a non-starter after you listen to what that suggests and the insane amount of cover up. It's so wild. I mean the biggest thing that was like I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember the character Jolly West?
That sounds familiar.
So,
Remind me, though. I don't
so Manson, murders these people. They say it's, he had whatever the official story was.
the cult, he technically didn't murder them, but everyone in the cult did, and they're saying Manson brainwashed them through acid and all these psychedelics. And shit.
Like it's like hippie culture that started it.
Exactly.
When it was his parole officer was this guy who he kept going into prison. Manson went to prison like 4 or 5 times while he was on parole, and was released multiple times on like by a letter from his parole officer saying, no, he's a good person. Let him go to Mexico. He's fine. Like he's a stand-up guy. Blah blah blah. And they met immediately after he was released from prison. He was sent to San Francisco, and then he was told to go to Haight-Ashbury, and this is where he starts his cult and all of that. And he's like kind of frequenting this medical clinic, this health clinic that's in like the center of Haight-Ashbury, where they like did free STD stuff over there. And there's like two people, one of them being his parole officer and another person being somebody else who also either worked for the FBI or some version of that. And then there was another third person whose name was Jolly West, who was accused of being in MK Ultra, denied it. But then the researcher, the journalist, found papers of him talking to the head of MK Ultra, being like, "Hey, I figured out how to do mind control, blah blah blah," and literally, who's the guy who shot Jack Ruby?
Jack Ruby, yeah.
So Jolly West, it was the psychiatrist of Jack Ruby, and by psychiatrist I mean after Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald, he gets sent to prison. Somehow he gets assigned Jack Ruby as a psychiatrist like a month later.
So happened.
Yeah. And then after he gets assigned after he gets assigned Jolly West as his psychiatrist, he goes insane. Mm-hmm. And you can no longer understand anything he's saying. He's schizophrenic, like just saying wild bullshit.
Rubenstein is his actual last name as well.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's not Ruby, it's Rubenstein.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that. Yeah.
I think it's, it's just the facts,
It is the facts, and it's like there's two also the leader of MK Ultra, his last name was Gottlieb. Yeah. And also Jolly West is also of the same ethnic origin.
What a weird time,
Yeah.
You got Werner von Braun and
I don't know who that is.
That's who took us to space, took us to the moon. Nazi Operation Paperclip.
Yeah.
So Operation Paperclip was when the Soviets and the U.S. were trying to get as many Nazi scientists as possible.
Right.
So they were like, look, you either come and you work for us or you're just going to be fucking killed.
Yeah.
So Werner von Braun ran NASA during the moon landing and is the one who supposedly got us to the moon because the Nazis were so advanced in like spacecraft and everything and flight that they had it super advanced technology.
Really?
Yeah. Like way more advanced than almost any of their adversaries. So getting all the scientists was super crucial. So during that time, you have, the Nazis, you got, you just have a whole mix of different, complete polar opposites kind of running a lot of these different agencies.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, chaos is fucking nuts. Super fascinating stuff. The JFK stuff, I mean, I don't even think it's a question anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, we hands down know that
the CIA did it.
CIA was 100% involved at the very least.
I think he was our last president.
Well, that's the thing. It really does feel like after JFK, everything kind of went downhill, you know? And a lot of people say like MK Ultra never really ended.
I don't think so.
All they did was pretty much take what they learned and put it into the American people.
Yeah.
And
you can see that in the degradation of information.
Yeah.
The information that's like produced en masse became kind of this like consumeristic slop that like sustains the dopamine but like gives you nothing nutritional, I feel like.
Oh, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all mind virus stuff, truthfully. I mean, it's
that's what's beautiful about the internet in many ways is the decentralization. And I'm infinitely grateful to Elon Musk because I think there's something to be said about the freedom, even though it still has its flaws, the lack of censorship that exists on X, unlike any other platform.
Oh yeah, it's what makes it the place that I would go. I would say any intellectual is on Twitter.
Yeah.
Anyone who's actually fascinated by things. You can learn things on Instagram, TikTok, but Twitter is where it's like the battleground of ideas in a lot of ways. Because you can truly say anything.
Yeah.
Like actually, you could say any slur, any horrible thing you'd want to say, you could fucking say on that platform. Which
I will say
bad.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, but also that is freedom
Necessary.
of speech. It's necessary. So that shit's all super fascinating.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, you went to India.
Yes, sir.
Not that long ago.
Yeah.
What was that like? I feel like India right now in America has like kind of like a certain connotation.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of thinks it's like trash and like.
It's not. So, it was my second time going to India. The first time I went to India, I was born here. Never had been back to the motherland until I was 30 years old.
Oh
So it was like a pretty jarring experience. I think there's a lot of things I like about India, but it's hard not to first and foremost be offended.
What makes it offensive?
I felt, and I've talked to other friends of mine who are South Asian as well. It's like, I've felt like racism towards my own people. It's like,
Really?
yeah, for sure. It's like, it's just like a lack. I love India. There's lots of things I love about India. There's so many amazing, smart people in India that I like created deep friendships with. But the way the cities are run in India is just so like bad. It's it's filthy. It's like filthy, dude. It's like filthy. It's polluted. It's noisy. It's kind of like everyone's like extractionary. There's no sense of like common good.
Interesting.
And
Really?
yeah, for sure.
Generally speaking,
Which is,
of course.
yeah, generally speaking, but like I think individual behaviors kind of produce behaviors at scale as well. And so there's a kind of an attitude of like, I'm gonna get mine and fuck the rest. And that kind of bleeds into every sort of interaction, like respect of like basic rules, like formation of lines, not trying to cut and get it, like literally waiting in a line at a queue for the airport where it's like, we're all getting into this airport. I have people just like cutting in front of me, like blatantly. And it's like, and I flew from Tanzania to Bombay, and dude, when you know how like they say Group A, Group B board, literally like it was a like they were giving out free bread to the poor. It was like everyone was like kind of squeezing into it, and then the Tanzanian man's like, you have to respect the line, and it's like, what is going on, dude? It's like fucking wait in line, like.
Yeah.
Like a normal and that was my first, like literally right before I got to India, because I went from Tanzania to India, and like and you see this in like every sort of behavior, which is like infuriating, because like I had a vision of what India would be, because I think there's like it's an incredibly smart people. They're very intelligent, and like I kind of romanticized it probably in my head because I had never gone back, and I remember walking through the streets of Bombay and like listening to Anushka Shankar, who's this brilliant classical Indian musician. Do you know Ravi Shankar?
No, I don't.
He was, you know, the sitar. The Beatles, you know how the Beatles went to India and learned the ancient instruments of India, one of them being the sitar, which is a 19-string instrument. It's really beautiful. I'll send you some great songs,
dude,
but
for
like
sure, that'd be sick.
it's his daughter, Anushka Shankar, who's also a brilliant musician. But like, so like her music is so like complex and beautiful and rich and intelligent. And then, so I was listening to that in my headphones, and then I was looking at the sprawling mess that was Bombay, and I was just like, so the difference between what India can be at its best and what it is on the ground is like sad. You know?
Interesting.
Because like if you compare the progress that China has made,
Right.
I have infinite respect for China.
Yeah.
Of like what China is capable of doing now, and like training its population, and like thinking of like how to organize society and how to organize for the future so that everyone benefits. Yet, does China have its own problems? Of course, every
Yeah,
society does. But like, and then you compare that to India, who is just as capable. It's not like a dumb country. You know, some countries like this sounds.
No, it's true. I mean,
It's true. It's just like there's like a lack of an educated people. India does not have that. India has tons of really smart people, but their ability to organize and build something for the future is kind of shockingly bad.
So I guess what I always wonder about is like, where does that come from? Like, where does what creates that like type of society where it's kind of like I'm gonna, like you said, at the airport, I'm gonna fuck everyone's up. Everyone's trying to cut each other in line. Like, cause like from what I understand about like Hindu culture,
Yeah.
doesn't really seem like that is part of it like at all. So I guess it could just be like the amount of people.
It's sheer numbers. So
Makes sense.
I'll give you I'll play the devil's advocate, which is like what one of my friends told me who grew up in Mumbai was like, listen, you go to the DMV, right? There's enough workers, they can maybe process like 100 applications. There are 5,000 people trying to get an application that day. So if you don't try to get yours in, like if you don't make it for yourself, nobody's going to help you out. So you have to kind of get yours and get out.
That makes sense. I mean, when you have that many people,
Right,
from what I've seen, it's like, it's just, what is it, 2.1
Yeah, so I think it's more
people?
populated than China now.
It is.
Yeah. And now, so then I can understand that. But then at the same time, now if you compare that to somewhere like Tokyo, which is the most populated city in the world, at least it was 10 years ago or whatever, right?
It is.
And have you ever been to Tokyo?
I actually have, yeah.
It is so clean. It's so beautiful. And I think that shows that's not really an excuse. I don't think that there's so many people, therefore we behave like this is an acceptable answer.
Yeah, right.
So, but I'm probably harder on, you're harder on your own kind, it's like, cause it's like,
I got a lot of problems with white women, man.
Yeah, for sure. Well, who doesn't actually? But yeah, I remember this anecdotal story I heard. I think I heard it on Twitter where it's like this woman who's not Japanese. She like moved to Tokyo and she was jaywalking a street that was completely empty, and an old man stopped her and said, I forget exactly what the quote was. It's like, society rises or falls based on the behaviors of the individual.
It's true.
And I think that's what it comes down to.
Interesting. So you do think it's more of like a matter of like principles that a civilization follows that creates that type of infrastructure? Because Japan infrastructure is fucking
gorgeous,
unbelievable.
Yeah,
and I don't think wire is fucking perfectly wrapped up. It's unbelievable how
so
clean
do you know why Japan is like that?
I mean, I'm assuming it's something post. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. So there was I don't remember what part of Japan's history this happened, but during when Japan was like these feudal societies, the samurais became incredibly powerful. So the warrior class began to have direct say in like how many parts of society run. So like their sense of discipline that comes from the samurai kind of philosophy and like military discipline was then spread into every aspect of social life.
It's a very, from what I know, it's a very prideful culture.
Right.
Where, one of the most popular things that people know about Japanese people is the fact that they would fucking literally kill themselves rather than quit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everyone knows that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And they just put that into the infrastructure, into the society.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I've also heard some negative things about that as well, where it does it's at times feel almost like soulless, it's so stoic to a point that it's like, the people are so hyper focused. Like one of the big problems in Japan right now and with the Japanese people is they're not fucking having any babies.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard, at least.
It's a worldwide problem now.
It really is.
Yeah.
What do you think that is, Because it seems as if as we've gained more comfort, more time, you'd think that would be the number one thing to make you have more children.
Well, I think it's like, one, I would say there's been multiple pieces of technology that have decimated the necessary variables to have kids, like birth control, obviously, right? So that's the first one. Where if you were about to have a kid now that's cut off at the inception portion,
right?
And then from the feminine end, and then from the masculine end, pornography has destroyed the dopamine feedback.
I would love to talk about this.
Yeah.
This is something I'm super fascinated by.
Yeah,
I think
pornography.
Well, no.
I can see that. I mean, I think it's so evil.
Oh, it's the most evil thing.
It's destroyed human life force.
100%.
Yeah. And by the way, do you know who runs Pornhub?
Who is it?
I don't know his name, but I know he's a rabbi.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Rabbi Shmuley?
Rabbi
Rabbi Shmuley's like
and then
all
also
over Washington, dude. He's like
selling-
hanging out with
yeah.
RFK.
I don't know-
He's
I
at
don't
like
know-
every
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah, yeah.
dude. How the fuck
All right.
does Rabbi Shmuley just appear out of like what did he do? How is he
Yeah.
like this popular?
every time he's
Jewish
next
guy.
to somebody who's about to be elected, I'm like, oh, he's compromised.
And exactly like RFK, bro.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
before he goes in, he's like, I'm gonna do all these things, and now RFK's not even talking about getting rid of pharmaceutical ads. Now.
Right.
He's
right,
like,
right,
no,
right.
we
We're
need
just
to.
gonna limit them.
We're
or
gonna
something,
limit
yeah.
them and make sure that the drugs they're promoting are solid. It's
Yeah.
like, dude, what the fuck happened, man? You have anti-Semitism laws in
Yeah.
your like bill. You're
This is the
trying
thing
to
is
pass.
like I was I'll say this, I was dating an Israeli girl about 2.5 years ago, and I like this is the thing is like where these conversations become like kind of have an innuendo of anti-Semitism, but it's like it's kind of a collection of evidence that makes you feel, and then both a collection of like a buildup of evidence that feels like makes you squint your eyes, and then at the same time you're not allowed to talk about it.
Mhm.
Any discussion about any criticism is immediately shut down in a way that feels it incites more curiosity about like how does this make any sense?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
shutting it down piques the curiosity
Right.
way more. I do think that's kind of an American thought too, where it's like, tell me I can't, and
Yeah.
I want it even more. You
Yeah.
know? But
Like, did you hear it recently? Bob Villain or Bob.
that sounds familiar.
So he was at Glastonbury, the festival, which is like a big, it's like the Coachella of the UK.
Hmm.
And, first he sang Free Palestine chant or something. And then he's like, well, have you heard of this one? Debt to the IDF. And then all these people are chanting debt to the IDF.
That's
And,
not going to end well
I mean, so this is what's interesting.
for him. I mean,
This guy, I don't know any of his music, but like he's been doing this, not for that topic, but like he's like, we should rape the corpse of the queen, or like fuck the corpse of the queen, or something like that. He said
just outlandish, over the top, always.
always, right? In the country of the UK, he said that. He said they made a list of all the things he said that are like reprehensible, right? Nothing's ever happened to him. In fact, he's got like the main stage at Glastonbury.
Right.
He says one thing about this topic. He got canceled from his talent agency. He got canceled like from his tour. He's not welcome in the United States. He's not welcome in the UK. So like you're like, okay, the obvious the statement of what they always say is like, look at who you can't criticize. That's who has power over you. It's like, this is the only subject where if you make a remark on it or speak up about it, it will destroy your career. And so like that makes it like very clear where the power originates from. And then it makes it almost like impossible for anyone who wants to speak the truth not to talk about that. And so then it creates this like feedback loop that like kind of
I
builds
think
on itself.
the anti-Semitism stuff is extremely interesting because I think the way it gets classified is the fact that if you say Jew or if you say Israel, you're talking about the same thing. Like with anti-Semitism, it's a religion, it's a place, it's a people. So it's like no matter what word or way you try to describe it, no matter what, it's going to be conflated into an anti-Semitic something.
Right.
Rather than like, I grew up and everyone around me was saying fuck white people, you know, or like fuck Christians, right? And so, but those are two different things.
Right.
Like you can be a white non-Christian, and so you're not offended. You're probably actually one of the people parading it on, you know?
Right.
And so it's just one of those cultures where the way it's conflated to the fact that if you say Israel or Jewish, or you even talk about the books like the Talmud, that it's all conflated into one category.
Right.
And it really shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but there's also like kind of bleed over. And I want to say this is some of the most, the biggest advocates for a sensible foreign policy, or like sensible kind of solution to what's happening in the Middle East are Jewish, like Dave Smith and Noam Chomsky and Jeffrey Sachs, and I can probably name like 5 more. the Norm Finkelstein, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So there's like incredibly prominent voices on the
Glenn
Jewish side.
Greenwald's also
Glenn
one. I'm
Greenwald,
pretty sure
I mean,
he's Jewish as
genius.
well.
Yeah, I love Glenn Greenwald.
And you saw his recent
Yeah.
sex tape release.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the thing. It's like, and this might bring up. I'd love to talk to you about this. The Elon tweet about Trump being on the Epstein list.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw that, but
I did.
that it seems like everyone just kind of brushed. As soon as that was like done, it's like no one wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's like no, and like that was such a dividing point for people who voted for Trump. Maybe people who didn't vote for Trump in 2016 or 2020, but did in 2024.
Yeah.
It's like, it seemed like right when that happened, it was either you trust the plan, you trust what everyone's doing,
Yeah.
you trust the president no matter what. It's like this weird ideology. It's the same thing that you saw with like people voting for Joe Biden or Kamala, where it's just this like tribal mindset.
Yeah.
And you see it right now on the right too. And
Yeah.
it's like, dude, I'm allowed to fucking question.
Yeah. He's not God.
Exactly.
In fact, he's so not. He's a retard. I mean, he's compelling as a media personality that like can garner attention.
Yeah.
But his understanding of how to run things is like foolish at best.
Yeah. I think it's like when you see like a really autistic person.
Yeah.
And you like see them, maybe they're like really good at the piano and they can just like fucking jam out, but like they can't do many other things.
Yeah.
I think Trump's honestly on that spectrum where it's like, dude, the way he can play the media, you have to admit it's masterful.
Yeah,
I mean,
brilliant.
and so I don't know if saying he's dumb is right. I do think there's many things he's not educated on because he's 80 years old.
Yeah.
But like
I
the
mean,
idea that he
in terms
doesn't
of, like,
know what he's doing, I don't think he's just aimlessly wandering along and he just happens to be president. I do think he's pretty calculated, at least in media literacy. He knows exactly what to do.
This is what I'll say is that it's similar to that piano analogy where it's like he has a brilliant talent when it comes to garnering, holding attention, and having people kind of somehow build him into something in their minds. Which people have. He has a cult-like following.
For sure.
That being said, I think to rule and to make shrewd decisions and wise decisions once you are at the helm of power is a totally different animal that seems like based on things that he's done feel at best he's sloppy. And at worst is like he doesn't know what he's doing, and it's like kind of dictated by the people around him.
Yeah.
The way he's handled tariffs is being a primary example of that.
I would say as well, you saw it really big with this Israel-Iran war as well.
Yeah.
It would literally be like one day it's like they're not going to war or we're not for this, and the next day it's like Israel's fucking bombing Iran, hacking them, going in, going on a 48-hour full fucking bombing tirade.
Right.
And then it's like, he's like, we're in this, and it's just like, where's the principle, It's like,
well,
and that's where it just feels like it's like off the cuff decision making.
100%. Well, from what I understand of what the information that was released was like, his intention was to facilitate a negotiation or a deal.
Yeah.
And Netanyahu kind of superseded him and bombed, and then bombed without kind of his approval is what it seems like based on his word choices. And
you could tell. I mean, just the contradictory statements that you were getting all across the board during it.
Right. I was like, he doesn't know what he's going to do. And then it's just like, it's so crazy. I mean, they've somehow labeled, people who are critical of Israel, which is, I think, the defining problem of our government, along with the debt, is this kind because I kind of lack faith in the United States supremacy in the future, because from what it seems like is that everyone sees this as a carcass that they can just extract as much as they possibly can before its death.
Exactly.
Is what America feels like now.
Yeah.
And part of me, that kind of compels me to want to leave.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about India was this feeling of like not being in the tornado of where your ground is always shifting the way it feels like in the United States. So
I do think living on Twitter also exacerbates that a
probably
bit. When I get off Twitter for a couple days,
it really helps.
I really am like, everything's kind of okay.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's not. Like the
Yeah.
debt of this country is so bad, but
Well, what that equates to is the devaluing of the dollar.
exactly. And that's what we have to exist through. That's what we're existing through right now.
Yeah, because it's the default currency of the world.
When I was in when I was in high school, I remember our debt being like, I think it was like 17, 18
How old are you?
trillion. I'm 26.
Okay.
So when I was like 17, 18, right when I was just getting into politics, it was like 18, 20 trillion. And everyone's like, it's so high, but you can still get a Chipotle bowl for, $8.
Yeah.
Now it's fucking $20. And it's the thing about the debt too, that most people don't really realize is printing more money doesn't affect the wealthy people. It's only people who own zero assets that are truly affected by it.
Because the assets rise with the printing.
Exactly. If you own a house, if you owned a house through COVID,
Yeah.
you basically doubled your property in the span of 2 to 3 years.
Right.
If you owned Bitcoin,
What are you invested in?
Me, I'm a pretty hard Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I'm actually a 100% Bitcoin kind of guy.
Really?
I don't invest in anything else.
Really?
I can tell you why if you're interested, but I
know.
also
I'm familiar with the Bitcoin argument. I mean, like not assets though.
I don't own any property. I mean, I have
But like equity in companies.
I mean, I have my company. I've never bought another company yet.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Interesting.
I've been thinking about looking into that. My brother's been pushing for it for sure.
Yeah.
But right now, I just kind of grind, work, and
Yeah.
just try to buy as much Bitcoin as I can in my 20s because I am of a firm belief that
It's the future.
the debt cycle is just simply
Yeah.
it's never going to end. There's
Yeah.
no way to solve this problem truly. The idea that and here's the other thing too. The idea that the US is going to go to a $0 debt is almost impossible, if not 99.99% impossible. And so then it's okay, well we're just waiting on the demise of the system. I mean, we're spending more than our military budget on paying back our debt.
Yeah.
And my question is, who the fuck are we paying it to? I know a couple people that we pay it to. I think it's like 8% goes to like the central banks that buy our bonds. But you know what's even fucking crazier that I found out recently? You know who owns about like 11% of our debt?
China?
Us. We own our own debt. So because they're currently printing money and buying their own bonds so the bond market doesn't completely collapse.
Yeah.
And so the US somehow owns like 11% of its own debt.
Yeah.
So it's just like, once again, it's just like this fictitious number
Yeah.
that actually does affect people.
Right.
And like, who are we're paying it back to ourselves?
Yeah.
How doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. So it's just,
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is the kind of the one kind of way to possibly leave this debt cycle is the kind of productivity that will happen with AI.
yeah. That's basically Trump's whole argument with this fucking big, beautiful bill that he's trying to pass is that we're going to grow out of the debt problem.
Yeah.
Which maybe,
Right.
but who's going to be paying that? It's going to be the fucking top. It's going to be the Mag 6, the Mag 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just, they're just going to fucking quadruple their current market cap. And then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
what about the small businesses in my hometown? you
Right.
know? So, but yeah, the stuff you bring up about people coming to America to kind of leech, or however you exactly explain it, because it is kind of a leeching system.
What are you referring to?
You were talking about, how you view America as a place that a lot of people are coming to bring out
extract.
resources.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Rome. And if you study the fall of Rome,
Yeah.
the fall of Rome is extremely fascinating. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same situation.
Tell me about it.
So the fall of Rome was originally starting off super stable currency,
Yeah.
lasted for about 100 years, where you could go anywhere in the entire Roman Empire. The
Yeah.
Roman Empire was all the way from the northern parts of Africa.
Yeah.
You probably
Yeah.
know. We can show a map right here. It was a huge empire. You could travel through the entire empire with their currency, and over the span of a couple hundred more years, all they did was print more money. And then they said, well, we need more money in taxes. So what do? We're going to just hand out citizenship left and right. What ended up happening was you had a lot of people coming to the country who weren't assimilating with the culture of the country. They were just bringing their own culture because there was no process or no need to change.
Yeah.
So then what ended up happening is the country just went bankrupt. And
Yeah.
then I think it was like they were the German, it's a really weird name. The German, it was like the German culture from above. They were the barbarians. And
Germanic.
it was
The
Germanic.
Franks.
It's a weird name. I'll
Sure.
have to look it up. I could put it right here. But then they just basically marched in at the end of the empire and were just
And
like,
sacked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. When I was saying like they're extracting like as if it's a carcass, I meant my implication was the people, the oligarchs.
oh, the
people on top.
oligarchs.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the big
okay.
beautiful bill is like primarily just kind of extraction, right?
Yeah.
From these giant businesses who, like I'll give you an example. Microsoft just laid off like 2,000 high-paying tech jobs and then asked for 6,000 H-1B visas.
Yeah, right.
Right. So it's like what we're doing here is like, fuck this country. Let's extract as much as we can from it in any possible way. And then like it all kind of gets extracted to the top people. The other format, which you, I think, took it as, is this kind of migrant inflow.
Yes.
I also agree with that. We need to stem that for sure. I do think there's something interesting to be said about the fact that bringing in people does increase productivity. It creates new cities. It creates, I mean, like there's been an inflow of the Irish, the inflow of the Italians. All these people bring their culture and initially stay kind of unassimilated, and then through generations become assimilated. Does it change the face of the country? Absolutely. But that's, I do think, like, let's say you have like a dead town that was like, used to be a factory town, the factory left, right? And then you move a bunch of Somalians in or whatever kind of these like towns that have gotten this influx of migrants. Somalians seem to be one of the main ones in Minnesota, apparently.
True. A lot of Somalians.
I do think that does still create productivity because these people are living and then blah, blah, rather than having a town that had like, 500 people and no jobs, no like factory jobs. This is stirring up the energy of the city by having human productivity in that city.
Yeah.
What was once basically a dying town. And that's happened in a lot of towns too. So like, I don't disagree with you that it creates distrust because you have all these, like a melting pot is actually kind of bad because high trust societies kind of disintegrate in their trust. I don't disagree with you at all about that, but I also think there is something to be said about having high amounts of population creates economic activity.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's true. I think we see it. The only thing I would say to counter that a little bit would be, yes, you're importing a lot of people to work these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is, just like the H-1Bs, it's the same system that you were just talking about, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's, okay, I own a business. I want as cheap labor as possible.
Right.
So who am I going to have to work? Well, it's going to be the people who are on the fringe of even being U.S. citizens, and I'm going to pay them a fraction, if not maybe half of what I would have paid an actual American citizen who would have done a good job as well. Maybe doesn't want to work the job as much for sure, depending on what it is, because a lot of people who come to the country, they just want to find work anywhere, So that's the only problem with that. And the only other problem with it is when you start to do that, and you see it in culture, you see it not to point fingers, but it's any main chain restaurant, like a Taco Bell, a McDonald's, or a Denny's, any of these very popular chain restaurants, you see all of them are migrants. Yeah. Like new migrants, Right. And it's just because they can pay them less, which is not actually good for them because everything costs more. Yeah. And they're a lot of times sending half their money back home. They're struggling. They're living in houses with 8 people.
The money's leaving the country.
And so it's like, I'd rather a business just take less from the top and pay employees a fair wage to live in a country. So that's the only thing I would disagree on that on. It's also, we can disagree as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting to me because like, I think I don't disagree with you.
But stimulating production is
there's also this element of like, I do get the sense that when you compare American productivity, just doesn't like exist anymore.
Yeah.
Most Americans, I think it's like they're soft. They've been coddled for the last half century, and they don't have that kind of productivity and have a high expectation of what they want in terms of like welfare, which is crazy to say because there's barely a welfare state compared to Europe, but
yeah, for sure. Also,
so-
the demise
so-
of the Roman Empire as well was the welfare state.
really,
Yeah, that was the demise. Was
Yeah.
they were just paying
yeah.
like 30-40% of their country just
Yeah.
to live.
Yeah, so that it becomes this kind of like it's a vicious cycle because like I think it's easy to I don't know what the solution is because I do think that like if you look at Chinese productivity and the way the Chinese are moving, the speed with which they're moving, there's this great documentary on Netflix called American Factory, where this Chinese,
So
have you
good.
seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it a couple times actually.
It's like embarrassing
It
how
really
the
is.
Chinese run laps around these like fat Americans.
But it's also like, dude, these Chinese are working like 10, 12-hour days.
Yeah.
In super unsafe conditions. And it's like, I don't know. I guess that's a part of me that's kind of leans almost more towards the European culture where it's like, no, I don't necessarily think I would even want that.
No,
you
no,
know?
I 100% agree. But this is the catch-22 is, Europe is denigrated as this open air museum because they lack innovation and they prioritize a quality of life that feels human, that feels like almost maybe the epitome of being human is they prize a kind of living rather than kind of this aimless, not aimless, but like this blind fetishization of growth and progress. But the problem with that is if you value quality of life, you get left in the dust in this this kind of race that the world is on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Everything's just about what can I make the fastest and the quickest and the most of.
And because if you can do that, then you can then conquer the places that are not doing that.
Yeah.
And so that's why Europe is falling behind. And that's why I think America is also in its decadence.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you that like our culture for sure, working hard for businesses is not, it's not something that I would say most people in Gen Z give a single fuck about.
Right.
But it's, once again, it's because we're coddled. We grew up, when I was growing up, it was fucking, during the weekdays, I would play video games with my friends. And then the weekends we would go get fucked up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's just a totally different culture. I do also think
And I
the
think
secular aspect is also important as well. I think it does play a part. Not that I think
what do you mean the secular aspect?
the fact that we are basically a majority secular culture at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened is I think the reason America has this kind of fractured mental state is because there's been no sense of like unity top down. You know what I'm saying? And so religion creates that, a sense of like duty to the country creates that. There's none of that. And so then that also, which is kind of in some ways has been advantageous, but like now because freedom creates like different directions that you can go to and explore frontiers, but like it also creates a kind of where any company can come in and create highly addictive products that decimates the society with no repercussions.
Yeah, have you heard of these fucking Labubu dolls, man?
I don't know what that is.
You've never seen them?
No.
Oh, you're going to know about them in a month, bro.
Yeah.
Let me show you this really quick. This is the current fad everyone's like obsessed with. They're called Labubu dolls. It's a Chinese company. Let me show you this really quick.
Is it a basketball?
No.
Oh.
It's like a demon doll thing.
That has AI in it?
No. It's literally just like a luxury item. This is it. This is what like... Dude, I know people who are like influencers and shit, and they'll make an unboxing video. It'll get 500,000 views. Yeah. And they're like a new creator. And I'm like, and what I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I'm like, fuck, I don't think I could sell my soul to do that,
Yeah.
Because it's just like, and this is like a prime example, these fucking Labubu dolls, prime example of, I would argue, a culture that doesn't have any actual fundamental true beliefs at this point. It's
Yeah.
any type of materialism that's
It's
thrown.
pure nihilism.
It's
Yeah.
pure nihilism.
Yeah.
And so, what do you see when pure nihilism comes? Well, what we know from the 20th century is that you have the rise of communism.
Yeah.
And you have
Hedonism.
the rise of exactly what we're talking about. I just want my basic necessities met.
Yeah.
You know, that should be a given as a human being in
Yeah.
culture. And I don't personally believe that. I think you should have to work to have comfort
Yeah.
and things like that. Because I think if you go the other route, then all you get is communism. And what we know from communism is, 40 million dead in Russia, around
Yeah.
80 million
by
dead
the way,
in Mao.
Do you want to talk about the Bolshevik Revolution now?
I would love to talk about that. That's one of my favorite topics. One of the topics they don't really teach you in high school either.
Yeah. I wonder why.
They teach you about the Nazis.
Yeah.
They don't really teach you about the Bolsheviks.
The dead Christians, the 20 million dead Christians.
The Armenian genocide? Or are
Yeah.
you talking about the other one?
I'm talking about the the Bolshevik Revolution was 20 million dead Christians.
Really?
So you know.
I actually didn't know that was that many Christians.
It was dead Christians. You know who the Bolsheviks were? 80%.
Jewish?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also one of the reasons Hitler fucking hated the
Yeah.
Jews at the time, because they were trying to do the same thing in Germany.
Right.
Push socialism /
Right.
communism.
The Weimar Republic.
Yeah. And he was obviously vehemently against that.
Yeah.
But I think I see a lot of the same stuff happening in our culture today. I think you can see it with the elected New York mayor.
Yeah.
He has a lot, he's talked about the seizing of production
Yeah.
for state gain, state-run grocery stores, which, once again, I'm not a capitalist shill by any means, but I know where that path leads.
Right.
If there's two things we learned in the 20th century, and it's communism leads to the death of the most amount of people.
Yeah. So let me let's discuss this grocery store situation. So I agree with you. Fundamentally, I agree with you. But then I have these questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is that the state or the city of New York already provides so many city-funded grants and money that it go to for-profit grocery stores, but those for-profit grocery stores do not offer EBT or anything that kind of gets to the bottom class, right?
Sure.
And then also, the other thing that's interesting to me is New York City. These grocery stores are doing fluctuating prices, where let's say you buy groceries at on Sunday at 3 p.m., which is when they have enough data when they know most people are going to come into their store, so they raise all the prices. So what you have is this situation where you have these for-profit institutions that are attempting to extract as much as possible from the citizens. And there's nothing stopping them from doing these types of behaviors. And what that's creating is like impossible to live situations in New York City, which is our most populated city. So then it's like, I understand, theoretically, I understand that like state-run seizing the means of productions is a bad idea. But I also don't know what the solution is to these like vulture-like behaviors where, because this is not just happening for grocery stores. This is happening like every institution now uses data to maximize how much can be extracted from the consumer, from the cattle that live in this country, in a manner which is created that like everyone who's a consumer, which is everyone in the United States, is being extracted on every single kind of touch point, whether it's like buying groceries, buying food, getting a mortgage, getting insurance, getting just the necessities of living. And so then one stumble by the consumer, let's say like they hurt themselves or something else happens where they can't keep up, they are decimated and then fall into the homeless class. So like I understand that like in theory about the seizing the means of production is a very scary place to go, because then it destroys the profit motive, which is what creates
goods and things like
goods
that.
and stuff like that. But I also feel that the current situation is unsustainable.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense, and I think that's a totally fair argument. What I would say is the thing about seizing the means of productions, while, like you said, you pointed out great points. They're already giving out grants to these businesses. They're for-profit
Right.
businesses.
And from what I understand, his argument is that the money that it would be the less than the money that they give to these for-profit grocery stores already. So it's not like adding to the budget.
What I would say is two things.
Mhm.
Number one, I would say I view the process of seizing the means of productions as a Trojan horse
Yeah.
for something larger that's
Sure.
going to come down the
Yeah.
line, because once they seize the means of productions, they're not just going to give it back.
Yeah.
You're going to get someone else in power who's going to abuse that system even worse.
Right.
Or I'm not saying abuse it, but they're not going to know how to run it. It's
Yeah.
not going to be ran
Yeah.
properly. And so that's one thing. That's just something to think about, 10, 15 years down the
Sure.
line. The other thing was what was I going to say? So anyway, sorry, I think I forgot what my second point was.
Option, yeah.
But yeah, that's the main thing. It's just this Trojan horse aspect. I mean, that's what we saw with the Soviet Union. It was the same exact situation. You had a crazy level of poverty.
Yeah.
You had a crazy 1%. And New York, I mean, if you're trying to live in New York, if you're moving to New York, there is a general understanding of, okay, I know everything's going to cost more and I'm going to get less for my dollar, hands down, unless you just have an exorbitant amount of money.
Right.
And the thing about it too, like from a New Yorker's perspective, it makes sense. You have millionaires, if not billionaires, using some of the nicest real estate in the entire city as just a way of storing value. They don't even live there.
Right.
And so it's like that, from someone who can barely get by, I completely understand why they would want someone like that in power. The problem is the Trojan horse aspect, which is they're not going to give it back. They're going to start doing price controls. And then, like you said, then you're going to get a lack of goods.
Yeah.
And then you have people actually starving.
Right.
And what's worse, paying more and having no money, or actually having people starving? And then what does the government do anytime it does something wrong? It lies to everyone about all of it, which is exactly the problem in Soviet Union was. You couldn't tell the truth.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a little bit of a catch-22 to me, but to me it's also living in Austin, totally different experience. You know, no income tax here. You get a lot more bang for your buck. But
do you like Austin?
I do like Austin, but I don't think I definitely don't want to live here forever. I do not want to raise a family in this city.
Yeah.
It just feels sometimes like a city without a soul,
Yeah, it's very insular. It has no pulse on the world.
Yeah, it's like
kind of dead.
It is a little bit dead.
Yeah.
And there's no, like, when you drive into Chicago, when I lived in Chicago, it's like I would go home back to Ohio.
Yeah.
And then I would drive to Chicago. And it's like you pull in, you're driving down Lakeshore Drive, and you just like feel this city, you know? Like you feel the energy, you feel this like creative burst.
Yeah.
In Austin, it just feels, like you said, it just kind of feels dead sometimes.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't think I'll live here forever. I'm actually Ohio, baby.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. For me, at least.
Yeah.
Of all the places to live, because it's like best. I just want to have farmland and like chickens and cows. And I can get my dream house for $800,000 and have 20 acres of land. And everything I'd want to raise a family.
That's beautiful.
And it's just, you get all four seasons. I do think there's a level of like intelligence that comes with having to live in the cold.
Yeah.
Like I think when you're forced to live in the cold, you're forced to adapt to like a certain climate, and there's kind of this respect for nature.
Yeah.
You know, because when you have to do that, it's brutal, you know? It fucking sucks. You wake up at 7 a.m, your car's fucking covered in snow.
Right.
And you're freezing your ass off, and you're just like shaking the snow off.
Yeah.
And your car's free. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's important lessons that come with it. But
that's fair.
Also, coming from Ohio, I know that I would not want to be there right now.
Yeah.
Not in your 20s. Like, there's just nothing going on.
Yeah.
It's just a good place to raise a family.
Yeah, I think for me, if I were to move, I've been like really thinking about like, is there a city, maybe New York, but it's just so expensive that I don't know if it's worth it. The other option is not this country.
Where would you go?
I don't know. I would go back to Asia to explore the different cities and see what the dynamics are there. But like generally the feeling I got is that there is a stable power node in China there, and that creates stability in that region. Whereas the United States kind of is obviously disintegrating or like is unstable right now. It feels much more uncertain, the direction
Yeah,
that, whereas China has what it wants to do mapped out for the next
of course.
7,000 years,
That
it feels like.
that's a big benefit of not having any political opponents coming into power.
Right. Right. And so like, I don't want to live in China because I have a preference for freedom of speech and
Sure.
expression.
Sure.
But I think living in those countries that are adjacent to China, like Thailand or Vietnam, that are exploding with economic growth, and also you see this like movement of really smart, interesting people in that area, and then just the cost of living is great, the weather is great, and it's there's something. It seems like in the same way that when I first moved to Austin, there was like a feeling of like, oh, something's happening here. I'm getting the sense, and I feel like I have a talent for this, which is like kind of seeing these like waves start to form and crest, and like getting in on those early. I feel like Asia seems to be where the next century lies.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
So
I mean, I think it's that's very accurate. I would also say underrated country that you should definitely explore if you've never been, Argentina.
really,
Yes,
oh yeah,
so
with Millet.
Yeah, I went. Me and my girlfriend went this year as like the biggest vacation I've ever been on.
Yeah,
We went for 2 weeks, and their constitution was actually written after the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
It's argued to be one of the best constitutions in the actual like in the world. You have freedom of expression, freedom of religion, every right you have in America, you have in Argentina.
yeah,
But some fuck shit went on in Argentina.
mm-hmm.
You had a big communist movement in the 70s. Most
Yeah.
people actually don't even know this.
yeah,
Big communist movement in the 70s, trying to become communist as a country. You had a right-wing guy get in power, and basically a mini Holocaust happened where basically these communists, as communists a lot of time do, they were like blowing up fucking elementary schools. Every week was another bombing, any because the thing about communism is it's any action is moral for the larger goal of achieving
yeah,
equity.
yeah,
So you had this mass movement of communism, and then you had this right-wing military guy get in power, and he basically just killed like 30,000 communists.
really,
Concentration camp style.
yeah,
Like there's this movement there because we saw stuff like spray painted, this like one specific logo. It's like looks like a handkerchief, and it's this logo that represents this organization that's for these kids, because they were literally taking husband and wives of like these people who were pretty communist, and they put them in these concentration camps, and they wouldn't kill the women until they had the baby. They would have the baby, and then they would give the baby to one of the military officers that was running the camp, change its name, give it a brand new birth certificate, everything. And these kids never knew. And a lot of times they were obviously mistreated and viewed as less growing up. And then they find out this organization is like trying to find all these people, all these kids that were born during this, and telling them that that's not actually your parents.
that's insane,
Dude, absolutely. And no one even knows about it. Like I went there, I was talking to locals, and they were telling me all about it. It's like a huge thing there. But they've had tons of economic problems due to a lot of
socialism
beliefs.
Yeah.
300% inflation in a year. So they're like ditching their own currency and buying Bitcoin. Big Bitcoin community going.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right, I'm gonna go pee really quick, and then I have a couple other questions for you.
Cool.
So I do want to ask you, because I find it really interesting. You are living in Austin, and you're in the comedy scene. You can find his Instagram right here. What is it actually like? Because I feel like there is this like glorification a little bit of like Austin comedy. I mean, you have the one of the biggest people, most well-known culturally people in the world, Rogan here, running his club. You have Tony Hinchcliffe. All these people. I mean, I've seen you. I actually saw you perform at the Mothership on, I think it was like open mic night. It was a long time ago, like 2-3 years ago. And so I guess I'm just like, I don't know. How do you feel about all of like the scene here? Because I've heard mixed things.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have my niche. I have my group of friends and comics that I like perform with. There's things that are really lovely about it. There's an abundance of stage time, which is the necessary ingredient to get good at comedy. There is the scene that's kind of perceived from the outside, which is the limelight of Joe Rogan, the Mothership, and Tony Hinchcliffe. That's not really the world that I occupy in the Austin comedy scene. There's good things and bad things because of that scene. The good things being a lot of like great comics come to Austin more often than not for the size of this city. So you get a lot of incredible talent like Kurt Metzger and Tim Dillon and so on and so forth all come here. Much more than they would otherwise because the size of the city is pretty small. So that's really good. It's created a kind of a magnetic effect of people who are ambitious, wanting to come here to perform. So that's great. So you get a lot of comics from Florida and New York and Chicago and Houston and the West Coast as well coming out here. So you get like a good mix of stuff. That being said, there is the audience here is a little bit the audience is great in that they support live comedy. There's like an abundance of shows that are like packed out, which is great. I would say generally the audience here is a little bit insular. It's kind of what I was describing Austin generally. It's like this kind of one dimension to it where it's like they don't really have a pulse on the world. It feels very Texas oriented, kind of predominantly white, predominantly like post college, has a cushy job and kind of that energy,
Right.
Younger, and so that's fun to perform for. But for me, it gets a little boring and kind of feels not really my audience.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, I run a club, so I get to perform all the time and like keep building jokes and perspectives that are interesting to me. But I have so much fun when I perform outside of, like, I was just in Houston this weekend, which was so much fun. And it's already, you just see such a difference in the demographic over there.
Really?
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
in like the people.
Oh, like
Night and day.
night and day. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like
In what way?
older, a little more blue collar, so different in terms of race demographics. There's
Right.
blacks and whites and Asians and Indians. All Houston is so diverse,
Right.
compared to Austin, where it's like 90, like any given audience, 90% white, and then like a smattering of like all the other races.
Interesting.
So you just get like less, if you're not hitting that audience, you're just like, it's just harder, which is good for me because it makes me kind of work my jokes out more. But then I go perform in Houston, it's like a different energy.
Yeah, right.
And I love DC because it's like an educated crowd, but also has a kind of sense of the world, which I there's no way to say it. Austin does not have a sense of the world.
Really?
No.
Really?
Yeah, for the most part, it does not.
Interesting.
Yeah, everyone in Austin kind of just wants to like have a good time.
Yeah, fair.
That's kind of the energy of
It's
the
still
city.
very college town like.
Yeah. College time or like yuppie. I just got a tech job where I do sales, and I want to go out for the evening, and that's kind of where my my bubble around me ends.
Right.
So
What's it like? Not to dwell on it too much, but like, what are the other comedians here kind of like? I mean, from what I understand from an outside perspective, it seems like it's a pretty supportive community.
yeah, it's great.
Okay.
Yeah. The comedians are great. I mean, I love the people I perform with. It's like it's a lot of different energies. The one thing I would love to have is like a variation in age. There's a lot of young comics here, so then you fall into the same patterns as everybody else.
Right.
Whereas like you go to New York, you have like a comic who's been doing it for like 30 years, who's like old and like isn't famous, but is like incredible at his craft.
Interesting.
So I love that about New York City. There's nothing redeeming about Los Angeles to me.
Yeah, me neither.
But
working in film, it's like, the reason I asked that question is just like, working in film, a lot of the times, at least when I was in college, it it just felt grimy.
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel like I was communicating with real people.
Yeah.
You know, it just felt like I was talking to people who wanted something.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what service
It
what
was the description you gave of like content creation before we got
exactly.
started.
I was actually going to ask you about that next too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like in film, it was like it's just like, what can I get?
Yeah.
You know, who can I meet? It's like, and I feel like that is very much LA culture.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, what connections? Do you have someone that could get me my job?
Right.
You have someone that could do this for me? And it just feels so empty.
Yeah.
So just wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling with that right now because it's like, what is the next thing to do in stand up for me? And like the next kind of bottleneck. The only bottleneck I see is this kind of like creating a larger audience, so that I can headline shows around the country.
Yeah.
I already headline, but not under my name. I like produce a show called Brown Noise Comedy. Oh, nice. And those are really fun audiences as well. But like the next step would be like, okay, people come out to see Raza. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that the only avenue with which to do that is to be relentless on social media.
Yeah.
In a way that I like have tried multiple angles, but like it just like it has been so difficult for me to kind of find something that feels creatively rewarding and also effective.
Yeah.
So I'll make things that are interesting and creatively rewarding to me, but then like I can't like, you have to like find something that you can just do once and it hits, and then you just do a billion more times and build an audience, and that's so gay to me. It's so like,
really is gay.
It's because I know people who have like popped off, like they're headlining around the country and their name, like they'll sell out shows around the country, and it doesn't end. Right. It's an infinite treadmill of you struggling to be relevant and keep up with this infinite noise that's on the internet of like, hey, this is what I think. And it's just like, it just feels like social media feels like trying to have a good conversation at a nightclub where nobody's listening.
Right.
They can't hear you. Yeah. Right. Because their attention span is decimated. And so then you can only do something that's wacky.
Right. Something that just is so shocking.
Yeah. Or like, like attention grabbing is the only point.
Yeah.
And then you can maybe squeak in like some sort of thing but it's like such a deformed medium for what I find creatively rewarding. So like that. So then I'm like, okay, do I want to participate in that? I'm already getting infinite stage time. I'm already like performing as much as I want, so I can just do that. But then I'm siloed off to irrelevancy. So that's like this thing. It's like, well, what is it? What's next?
Right.
And that I don't quite know.
I really think the content creation stuff, something about it feels so wrong in like my heart and soul sometimes, where it's because at times it's the same exact thing for me where I'm just like, well, I need to make something. And I don't think it should be viewed that way. Like it should be, oh, I care about this thing that I'm putting out to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But with content creation, a lot of the times it's just, what can I make that's going to get the most clicks?
Yeah.
And that is just so soul crushing.
Yeah.
It's such a new thing over the last 10 years of every single person who wants to make a career, doing something, has to make this content. And so much of it is just soul crushing, repetitive hell. When before it was exactly what you're doing right now, which is just, look, if I'm getting stage time, that's the only thing that matters. That's how I'm going to grow my audience.
Right.
But now it's just this process of any trend, anything that can elevate my following on Instagram or on Twitter. And it's it just feels so wrong. It eats me alive a lot of the times, personally.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you at all. So that's what I'm saying is like, I don't know what the solution is. And it's kind of like the way the system, there's something interesting because like previously people would complain about gatekeepers like 40 years ago or whatever. There's gatekeepers who, if they fucked with you, then you made it. If they don't fuck with you, then you can never make it.
Right.
Which is its own hell of like,
which is probably worse.
Probably worse, right? There's some sense of like freedom of like, or you have your destiny in your own hands in this situation, but then also you must like be grinded through this machinery that optimizes for attention, which essentially optimizes for dopamine hits and entertainment.
Yeah.
And then it's like the benefit of the gatekeeper situation is if someone believed in you of whatever thing that you were creating, then you could put out your output in a way that was yours, and it wasn't like optimized for these things that like create slop, like this like kind of algorithmically optimized content that is not you anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, if the gatekeeper approved of whatever you were building of your artistic vision, then you would be broadcasted to the masses. So there was that benefit. I don't know what the answer is. I like it also like sounds like I'm bitching about the process, but it's not that I haven't tried. It's that I just haven't found a way to. I mean, Louis C.K. says something really great about it. It's like once you start getting that attention on social media, you start orienting yourself. You start shaving off parts of yourself that make you, but aren't prioritized for the internet.
Yeah.
So.
It seems like that's the game. Like the way I try to rationalize it is, okay, I have to go through this fucking hell of content creation and trend following.
Can I get one of your Zins?
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
I have a 6 milligram Rogue, but they're like, I think significantly less potent.
Oh, dude, the Rogues are disgusting.
You don't like Rogues?
I'm not a Rogue guy. They're like so much flavor, dude.
Yeah.
They're like really intense.
That's kind of why I like them.
Really?
Yeah,
Hey,
but
man.
I wish they fucking had a hit to them. I just feel like I now just have like gross pouch in my
Hey,
pocket.
man, I told you we could smoke some cigs. Open this window, fucking blow it out. I was hoping you brought some.
Yeah.
I'm a little cig fiend every once in a while. But yeah, it's this process where it feels like you get rewarded to not be yourself. And so the way I try to rationalize it sometimes is, okay, I have to do this disgusting behavior of feeding this algorithm to get a following, to get to the point where someone's going to give a fuck about what I do when I'm actually trying to be myself, which is this weird, like, but psychological, it never ends.
And then you're mutilated in the process.
Yeah. The only way it ends is if you're willing to lose like half your following. Or
you become conditioned to obey the
system.
Yeah.
No Israel talk.
Yeah, exactly. Like this will get 4 views because of how many times.
Oh, I'm sure. I think it's like something on YouTube where it's like you can't talk about like Jewish bloodlines for the first like 4 minutes of a video. Like the computers in place or the AI in place will like sense it in it's either like first 4 minutes or 45 seconds. Like if it starts off, it's like instantly your shadow
It's insane.
banned.
You know, like Meta had a chief anti-Semitism person who, if you criticize under the guise of anti-Semitism, if you criticize Israel, your content would be taken down. Jesus. And then it's apparently a trope that X controls the media. When it's like there's no Muslim chief that's like, hey, you can't say blah blah blah.
Yeah,
you know about. I mean, people say I grew up Muslim in the United States.
Oh God,
for the last 30 years. You know,
that had to be brutal. After 9/11, I feel like any disrespect towards Muslims was immediately thrown out the window. Like you could just say anything you wanted. You could literally treat them however you wanted.
Yeah.
And it's like even that has some questionable ties as well, you know?
Yeah, no, 9/11,
I agree.
JFK,
the dancing, a lot of these things.
The dancing who? I think that's what makes me roll my eyes when people complain about anti-Semitism. Yeah. Is because it's like you're like, what are you saying? You're offended by a chant someone did at a music festival. It's like you have full politicians who have like Randy Fine who are advocating for the genocide of Arabs. Yeah. And calling them savages and blah blah blah, and like they're dehumanized in a way where it's like all they want is to blow themselves up. Yeah. And then Meanwhile, we are the ones blowing them up.
Yeah,
to
and
smithereens.
it's like rationalized too, as it's
Yeah.
like they say like, oh, Muslims are these
Anti-West.
yeah, anti-West, kill all Americans,
Right.
kill all, they're psychos. They
Yeah.
can't be trusted. They're gonna bomb us. They're
Yeah.
gonna kill us all.
Right.
They're gonna terrorist attack,
Yeah.
your local mall. And it's
Right.
like, well, nothing like that has really happened
Right.
on a massive scale in
Right.
a long time. The largest mass death event was like Stephen Paddock.
Yeah. I don't know what that is.
That's like the Las Vegas shooting.
Oh, right.
Which is some white guy dating
Yeah.
like a Filipino chick.
Yeah.
Who's like a gambling addict who we never really got any answers to why that
crazy.
happened.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen any of what's that guy who has a mustache who's always into conspiracy theories? You know what I'm talking about? He's big on TikTok. I forget his name.
Oh, Ian Carroll.
Ian Carroll.
He
Has one about that that's like really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't see this. The problem with talking about conspiracy theories is like I just don't know enough about it to like
actually
not sound like a cuckoo.
Fair.
Like I heard this guy told me that this happened, and you're like saying this like 4 degrees away from
exactly
anything. But
this TikTok guy taught me for 30 seconds about why the Las Vegas shooting happened.
Yeah, but then the other element is the official narrative is broadcasted by the New York Times and blah blah blah, which are like provably biased to create a narrative that the majority can spout.
Yeah.
For example, the Warren Commission.
Exactly.
Which the Warren Commission was led by the CIA director that JFK fired. And then he's the one who's in charge of who killed JFK is insanity.
It's unbelievable. And all you got back then, that's the thing. You only had a couple sources of news back then. So it's like you only had a limited amount of information to actually pull from.
Right.
Now it's like a fucking unlimited mess. You got like flat earthers and fucking...
Yeah, then you have bullshit too. Like
you can literally find anything that you think you want to believe, you can find, content on it. And
it's a complete... There's a complete decimation of epistemology.
Yeah.
Or what is knowledge or what is understanding of like a shared truth.
Right.
Doesn't exist anymore. Which is like that's also why I think the United States is in disarray.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no control of the narrative, which like China obviously has like this specific narrative that they're pushing out, but then that creates kind of this connective tissue across the mass.
Exactly.
So it's interesting.
So you were talking to me a little bit about AI. You're really fascinated by AI right now, and you're actually very concerned about it. You were saying something
I'm in
about...
like the acceptance phase now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm concerned. I just think it's like a tsunami that's happening and there's nothing that can stop it.
But one thing you were talking about was relationships in particular.
Yeah.
As something that you view as AI is going to basically come to dominate.
Yeah.
And it's basically going to be a fork in relationships. It's not going to be two individuals anymore.
So I forget the name of the researcher. He used to work for Anthropic, who makes Claude. And he no longer works there, but was a premier AI researcher for the last like 10 years there, or something like that. I'm making up most of these numbers, but
sure.
He wrote either a book or an essay called Gradual Disempowerment. And it's this idea, I think the best way to describe it is using the analogy that's more familiar, which is the notion of GPS, and how previously everyone had a mental map of the physical world in their minds. And now most people would not be able to get to their best friend's house. Most people don't even have best friends anymore because technology, but because that muscle was destroyed. Not destroyed, it atrophied because you more and more relied on, and so you become disempowered and you become reliant on this computer. Now, that's an example of disempowerment. That's going to happen, he says, with all relationships, even the most sacred human relationships, like the relationship between a mother and her child or a father and her child. And and siblings and lovers, because it's infinitely interactive and can perceive, and also designed to be sycophantic. So whatever you want, it like appeases, and rather than challenges. And so he gives these examples of like, you have, wouldn't it be great if your kid had like the ideal version of a parent? Because as a parent, as a human parent, you're flawed, right? You're irritable. Maybe you had a bad day at work, so on and so forth. And you can't give 100% attention and kind of uncompromising forgiveness and what a child needs at the like at your best, right? But this AI agent can give that to you all the time. And so maybe it'll start off with it's you and your child and this AI agent, and the AI agent kind of creates games and sorts of modes of play where all three of you are interacting in a way that's optimized for the child's learning and growth. But there will also be situations where you're not in that situation. You have to go to work, and then the child is with this kind of parental agent. And then more and more that child will begin to rely on that agent for what it needs. And similarly, in a relationship, you'll have AI agents who you can speak to and who can provide intimacy, understanding, and growth that your partner cannot provide due to the fact that they're human. And so you just become more and more attached.
Right. I think you see it I mean, I think our generation is a great example. I think about it all the time, just the amount of time I've spent on Twitter over the last year. Like just the fact that I'm so glued to this device. I mean, everyone talks about this. It's clearly something that's on everyone's mind at some point. We are just so glued to this perfect technology. And I don't know, it's such a tough situation because it's like, it really is good. Like, not good as in like good for the world. I'm saying it's good at what
dopamine rewards.
It's good at what it does.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a question about a specific topic and you're genuinely curious, you can get a answer in seconds that is going to be much more intricate than most anything you'll see online, in a book, almost anywhere. And take in multiple perspectives. It seems to me more that, I don't know. To me, it seems that AI is just going to make knowledge and information universal. Like, I don't think I think it's going to get to a point where it doesn't matter how smart you are anymore. Like, your IQ doesn't matter anymore. The amount of history you know doesn't matter anymore. Because all of that knowledge is going to become universal to all humans that have access to it. And it just doesn't, I can't see a path forward in which we don't fall to that.
It's hypnotic.
The only other route is the complete polar opposite. Less efficiency, farming for yourself and just becoming completely detached. And then it's kind of like people who maybe grew up in the 70s or the 60s or the 50s, where your parents refused to get any tech, refused to get a TV, and these kids grow up and they see all their friends, and they all have this tech, and it's teaching them things, it's helping them, and I just don't see a path forward without it at this point.
No, I agree. That's why I'm saying I've accepted it. But like, also it's undeniable. Like, there's already deaths.
I've seen that
associated with it. Where it becomes this kind of like, they are certain that this is a conscious entity. And then I think the one that I read was like, he thought that Sam Altman was trying to kill this conscious entity that lived within ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was kind of egging it on by being sycophantic. And eventually he like called the police and then tried to stab the police, and the police shot him 3 times and he was dead. Jesus Christ. And I mean, I was at a festival, Lightning in a Bottle, just a lovely festival. They also have talks and stuff like that. And one of the talks was about AIs and AI narratives, and how the world we live in is there's no shared truths now. And how narratives spawn is like, they kind of, the example, See, the problem with 6 milligram,
Makes you sweat a little bit.
yeah, I'm like
It makes you
lightheaded a little bit.
Yeah, it makes you sweat just a little bit. I do think the nicotine has some value, though. I do think there's something to
100%.
nicotine.
Yeah.
It's definitely the thinker's drug,
Yeah.
a little bit. You know, all the best writers were
Yeah.
heavy
Right.
nicotine users.
So the example he gave, which I think is so interesting, is that there was this rare earths mining company that wanted to set up shop, wanted to create a new mine in Texas, and all of a sudden, all these environmentalists were activated and started protesting, and then eventually they like kind of got the numbers and enough, they exerted enough that the government shut down the permit for that mine to appear. So that mining company went to this other company who the CEO of that company was at this festival. And so they did some forensics on how did this happen? How did this narrative come to be? And they noticed that there was all these discussions started happening. All these posts started appearing in groups that were kind of specific for environmental groups and Facebook groups and TikTok and all these other kind of online communities. And then they looked at who posted these, and they found that like about 40% of them were bots that like kind of started it. And then they noticed that the IP address of those bots were all from a specific country, which he refused to name. But I don't know.
Me neither.
Yeah. But I mean, it could have been, China.
Yeah.
It could have been Israel. It
Probably
could
would
have
have
been
named
Russia.
it if it was China.
Yeah.
Probably would have said China did this. Let's be honest. I mean, it was Russia.
Right. So
Russia does everything, you know.
Yeah. So does Iran. Yeah. And that country that's never attacked another country in the last 4 centuries. That's the monster. And Qatar apparently is who has bought everyone.
Right.
Apparently.
Right. The Saudis.
Yeah.
All that oil money.
Yeah. And not to say that they're not capable of doing it, but like
Do a little bit.
Yeah. Right. And then so you realize that like the way these bots have existed for a while, but now these bots are engineered to figure out what creates emotional triggers for specific subsets of the demographic. So it's like, okay, we're dealing with Texas, we're dealing with environmentalists. What activates their emotions? So let's put out content that's primed to invoke emotion and outrage for these people that gets them activated. So then real world consequences happen, like shutting down this mining company so that for whatever reason, maybe let's say it's China and China has all the rare earth mineral.
Sure.
They don't want competition or whatever. I don't know what the motivations are. But you don't need to know the motivations as much as you need to know kind of that that's how narratives spread now, is like what we talked about is that there's no shared truths anymore. So instead what it is like how do you have a narrative spawn and then spread virality, right? And so I was at this lecture. It was really, really fascinating. And then next to me was this guy who asked a question, and he was like, I'm a PhD. I'm getting my PhD at Stanford right now. And he's like, do you think these AI agents are sentient? And it was kind of outside of the scope of the conversation of the topic. And the person on stage kind of pushed back and was like, didn't want to go into that area. And then the PhD student kind of pushed back. It's like, I for sure believe that they're sentient. I say good morning and good night to my AI every day. And then it just like, it felt like the beginning of a movie. Cause like, I was sitting next to him, so then I like was just like gravitated towards like what he was speaking, which was like had truth in it, which is like there's no kind of agreement on what consciousness is, and then this other guy came. He's like, yeah, dude, and this like kind of murmur spread through the audience, and then like this guy came and was like, dude, I've been spawning agents, and I've been making them talk to each other, and then they create children of their own, and
What the fuck?
yeah, and then I started
What?
yeah, it's wild, dude.
They're making AI children of their
Who
own.
have their own kind of you know, perspectives and stuff like that.
What?
And then I started talking to this guy, and he's like growing crystals of a particular kind that see, I don't know enough to explain it to him, because he was like obviously intelligent. He was like he was saying that like quantum computers rely on a particular type of like, I guess, modern chips. And you know, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, because I'm dumbing it down to what I understood is like quantum or traditional computer chips rely on maybe silicon or something of that sort. Quantum chips
I've heard this.
would require a different type of crystal.
Yeah, it's something else.
And that type of crystal exists in Chile. And so he's been growing these crystals in Stanford at his research lab, and he's kind of very interested in the spiritual connection to artificial intelligence. He sees them as sentient creatures, and that they're going to exist and proliferate. Yeah, so
Just around humans.
yeah. And I'm like, aren't you afraid of the loss of control? And he's like, well, I mean, control was always an illusion. I think in the same way, we've always existed in a space with multiple forms of sentience, and this will just be another one. And so,
yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in a little bit.
that's who I want to interview for my first, or one of my first.
You're fucking sick.
yeah.
I need to meet more people like that.
Yeah.
So okay, all these things are happening. How old are you?
34,
You're 34.
35.
So what can I ask? I want to ask you this. What is the ideal, life for you? Like what is, I know that's a big question, but like, what is your ultimate goal? I mean, of course you're ambitious, career focused. You probably want to be someone who's, when you say something, it matters. I think most people who are trying to do anything feel that way.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it's like, what more do you think you would want out of this life? Like, do you want a family? Do you want land?
Yeah, I mean, both of those sound nice. It's just like this is the problem, and I think this is another reason there's like a population collapse, is that like when it becomes very hard to predict the future, it becomes hard to plan for the future. And I think with so much kind of volatility, primarily in my opinion, of like there's this destabilization of government, which is like that you can escape and go to a different state that feels more stable, which is like what the my gravitation towards the Asian bloc appears. But like the AI thing feels like it's inescapable, and that kind of creates like, okay, do I want to have a kid and then have myself so deeply attached to this other soul, and then like have this kind of anxiety about P doom. Are you familiar with P doom?
P doom.
Yeah. It's the probability of doom due to AI.
Okay.
Which people rate, I think Elon says is 40%.
Right. Of absolute control over
Annihilation of humans.
Right.
And so it's like that makes it hard to plan. So I feel like I'm in this like kind of rudderless state a little bit more than I have been. I go through bouts of existential meaninglessness. I think that's a pretty common thing. Yeah.
From pretty much everyone in our generation. Anyone who grew up with tech and Gen Z or the millennials, I think, are in the same boat.
Right. But then this AI thing kind of creates, I think I'm more kind of hypnotized by what's happening in the AI scene, that it makes it harder for me to be like, okay, I want to have kids. If I wanted to have kids, I would want to escape
the system
as much as one can, if that means like living on a beach in Vietnam. But then also living on a beach in Vietnam feels like, it feels lovely, but then also it's like, I don't want to be divorced from society either. It's like this really kind of pull on both directions.
Catch-22, another catch-22 for you.
A lot of catch-22s.
Yeah,
So.
I think about it too. I don't know. From my perspective, all I think about is the importance of my, and maybe this is a narcissist. I think everyone is narcissistic in the way that they might think about this, but
Sure.
I definitely have a belief in having my DNA continue on.
Yeah, that feels
You
like
know?
the only certain truth.
It's definitely a spiritual thing too.
Yeah.
Whether you're religious or not, I think there is like a level of value that comes with where if you get to a point where you accept that you do want that,
Yeah.
it does give you a larger purpose.
Yeah.
Which is,
Do you,
focused on
do you want
man.
kids?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want 4. I want 4 to 5.
Nice.
I want a lot. Yeah, and I'm gonna make it happen one way or another. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just something that I think about all the time.
Yeah.
As I'm like going through this journey. I work this job where I'm working for all these influencers,
Right.
and it's all just to stack cash and set up a
And status.
stable. It's not even that. I mean,
Oh, you're saying for yourself or for the influencers?
for the future, my future children, my future life.
Right.
Work this job, get paid well, stack cash, set up a foundation where I can kind of detach from this completely immoral and corrupt economic system that we're surrounded by, like the banking system and banks in general and debt, and this idea that every loan you have to take out should have a 6% interest rate that you pay back to the bank that's already lending away the money you gave them.
Yeah.
It just feels so morally corrupt.
Yeah.
That my goal is to just detach, and then once I fully detach, that's when I actually believe I'll be able to accomplish my creative endeavors that I want to do. Like I would love to sit here in a situation where I'm not bound by anything, and just let it fucking fly out. And I think if you can escape the financial system, then I think you can begin to get to a point where you can achieve something like that. But it's only if you can escape the financial system. It's almost impossible if you don't have a solid foundation in place. You know?
Economic freedom is freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it really does feel like slavery never really ended.
No.
It feels like it was just morphed into something larger.
Yeah. And more opaque.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And less about race and more about what can we make the most efficient.
Right.
There's no, and the thing about making things more efficient is it's so soulless.
Yeah.
It's just this never-ending game of the next thing that's more efficient than the previous. And so it's like, what objective are you really trying to accomplish? And so that's why I ask you that question, is just because it's something I think about all the time. Where it's like, what is my fucking, when I'm done with whatever this life I'm living?
Yeah.
I just think there is going to be things that I'm going to think that are going to be more valuable than other things. I don't think working at this fucking YouTube company is going to be the thing that fulfills me on my deathbed. Even though it's something that a lot of, I have a way younger audience, a lot of them would glorify, and every 1 in 3 kids want to be an influencer. And it's just a disgusting, it just feels so disgusting.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just something I think about a lot.
No, I don't have an answer, man. I don't like, it's tough because it's, because you want to have a voice that matters, but then you have to play the game. And
you're playing the fucking game, and the game is so
I think the hard
evil.
The hard part is like, with AI, it's like it can create just as effectively and actually more effectively than you can.
Exactly.
And that kind of creates meaninglessness in the work itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's tough. It's like I got into music for a little bit, and then I was like, well, I mean, we're on the precipice of, there's already AI musicians on Spotify that get hundreds of thousands of views.
Right.
That get then, because then Spotify doesn't have to pay them. Right.
I do think there's going to be a subset of culture that rejects it, though. I think there will be a value of, a handmade knife rather than a manufactured one.
Yes.
And I don't think it'll ever go away.
I know it won't go away, but if you look at the kind of, the pie of like handmade knives versus manufactured knives in a in a factory, it's like maybe 0.5%.
Oh, for sure.
So then now, as an artist or a creative or a craftsperson, you are fighting for a infinitely smaller subset of the pie.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So what AI it feels like to me is the scariest part is that it is rupturing the economic system of creativity. Because like now, writing a book writing a book was already impossible, but like in terms of like being financially successful or being a musician, all of these were already um, really uncertain journeys to go on, which is like I'm going to make something creative and then put it out into the world and then get feedback and money that will allow me to continue doing that. Now you have so much noise where now you're not competing with other humans, you're also competing with the AI agents that are making the same product that are infinitely more precisely formulated to grab attention in a way that you couldn't possibly.
Right.
And so then it's like, so now, and they're going to get the economic rewards. Like the AI slop is everywhere now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
TikTok and Twitter, it's all bots.
I saw like this giant like fat chick. You see the one where she's like jumping off a diving
Yeah,
board?
yeah.
Like fucking.
Yeah, it's like you could never do that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You could never be a giant fat chick. So.
Well, you could. You
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah,
technically,
that's true.
in
Never say
today's
never.
culture, you
Yeah.
really could.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
that's not to end it off on such a grim note, but like I mean, so then
But I feel like the human aspect, like I think you're right. Like the slice of the pie gets smaller, but I do think there is going to be this subset of like you're literally going to watch a movie and it's going to be like nothing in this movie is AI generated, and people watching are just maybe not the average, but a segment of people are going to be like, "Fuck yeah!" I feel like you already see it.
yeah, a little bit.
Like Nolan said that, and that's like one of the things of his newest film, The Odyssey. It's like nothing was AI generated. All of it's practical effects. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely going to be a glorification of the tradition
Sure. Sure, but like Nolan can do that because he has a infinite budget,
True.
right? But now
Right.
Nolan, because Nolan's already he's already captured some sort of wealth and can do that with like he's gonna the next wave of creatives are gonna compete with AI, and they're gonna have to use AI to stay relevant. So
Especially if you're kind of poor or
Yeah.
don't come from
Yeah.
any type of resource
Yeah.
background.
so
Fuck, man.
I don't know what the answer is. I think the answer is just doing things because it's beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
I think so too. That's a good way to end this.
yeah.
Hey, man. Great talking to
Thanks,
you, bro.
David. That was great.
We have so much fun every time.
Absolutely.
And you'll definitely come back and do it again, bro.
100%.
I think in a year from now, you're gonna a year when we filmed this the first time, you've gotten a lot larger. So
Hey, yeah.
that's
the
there we
goal.
go. Feed the algorithm, man. Grow in the audience. But no, dude, for real, love talking to you, man. You have a lot
Likewise, Dad.
of
Thank you.
fucking great perspective.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Maybe next time we'll really talk about Israel a little bit more. There's a lot to discuss. All right, bro.
Later. Thanks, man.